Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of our autism awareness podcast called Spectrum Stories. I'm your host, and my name is Aarav Sharma. I'm an autism advocate, and I'm a founder of Allyhq.ai, which is a communication platform for families with special needs children. In our podcast, we invite change makers from the autism community who are making a tremendous amount of impact through their work. Today, we have with us our very special guest and a significant influencer, Miss Denise Bradley. Ms. Bradley founded Harambee Consulting Group in 2013. Her experience is extensive. She has served as a developmental consultant, program specialist, grant writer, and mental health specialist for and in community organizations, public agencies, medical facilities, and university settings. She has a postgraduate degree in clinical psychology, many social and professional affiliations, is a born networker, has a full body sense of humor, and is ever curious about the world. Her consulting services are done in honor of her grandmother, Alverna Roberts, a true character who died 2 weeks short of her 101st birthday. All her life, she convened people, family, friends, and strangers alike. Assembled under her roof, she housed, fed, and nurtured them, shared her mother wit, and sent them on stronger for experience. Robert's resilience and life force epitomizes what Denise offers clients: robust services and resources that generate and sustain growth and vitality, along with client-friendly services that spotlight human potential. For such an exchange to happen, health, educational, and social service organizations need certain assets: a bold vision, sound strategic thinking, multicultural humility, and quality work. So without further delay, let's welcome in Ms. Bradley. Ms. Bradley, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and consider my request today.
Sure. Glad to be here.
Let's dive straight into your journey with some of my questions. So my first question is, could you share us a little bit about your journey and what led you to found Harambee Consulting Group, particularly focusing on supporting individuals with exuberant behaviors, mental health diagnoses, substance abuse, and judicial involvement?
I have two different companies. I had a nonprofit named Harambee Community Services. But let's go back a little further than that. So I first started working in the field in 1985. I fell into the field. I was in graduate school at the time, and I was working at a hospital, and they laid off the whole mental health team. And because I was putting myself through school, I needed to find another job. And so one of my teachers at the graduate school says, "Oh, my wife has a company that works with people that have developmental disabilities. You should call her. She's always looking for good people." So I thought, I don't think I want to do that. I called and I got paired with somebody who actually went to my school. She was going out on maternity leave, so I was taking over her caseload. And her caseload were babies that were born with PCP in their system. And so they had a lot of issues, they had a lot of problems. And so we were hired to help the babies learn how to sleep better and not be irritable. And so I was there the first day, loved what I was doing. I finally made the connection between the learning theory class I was taking in graduate school and what we could actually do with that knowledge in the community. And it really excited me. So I really loved working with the foster parents and the babies. And our program grew quite a lot. And I was chosen to be head of this program. It was an in-home behavior program. And so I started out with babies, and then I moved on to toddlers and did a lot of toilet training. And I just really loved it, because if you could get a good behavior plan around people, they actually did really well. And that was really gratifying to me. So I went out and did other things, and then came back to the field, and went out and did other things and came back to the field. And finally in 1997, I just made a commitment to be in this field and have been working in it ever since.
So in your opinion, how would you define exuberant behaviors, and what are some common misconceptions that people might have about it?
So I came up with the term exuberant behavior because I felt like the way in which people are described, which is there's these categories that people put people in: mild behaviors, moderate behaviors, or severe behaviors. And because I like to be very collaborative with the people that I work with, I didn't feel comfortable sitting around a table with somebody who had a lot of challenges and talk about them as having severe problems. And so I came up with the word exuberant because It suggests that the person is very intense and lively, which is what I consider some of my folks that I've worked with. And so I've just used that term so that we all know that, okay, this person may have some issues. I didn't like the word severe or you have moderate behaviors or whatever it is. We all have behaviors. It's not just people that have intellectual disabilities that have behaviors. It's just that when we're rude to somebody in a store or something like that, people don't put a diagnosis on it. But people are very quick to put diagnoses on folks who are different than us. And so I just use the term exuberant as my own way of saying that this is an intense, lively person who may have more problems than somebody else, but it's not actually as clinical as we make it out to be. And so that's why I use the word exuberant instead of some of the other words in our field.
I think that can definitely make also like a really big social and impactful change in our society, because when you're coining exuberant behaviors, it destigmatizes also how like we approach and how we look at different people. So definitely this exuberant behavior phrase is really beneficial and can be really implemented within society. So in your opinion, what are some of the biggest challenges faced by individuals with exuberant behaviors, mental health diagnoses, substance abuse, or judicial involvement, especially concerning access to support and understanding?
There's a whole bunch of barriers for people, especially people who are complex and have multiple complexities. The big issue is that people don't want to be around them. A lot of service providers in our industry don't take people that have exuberant behaviors or what we call co-occurring mental health or substance abuse issues because they're more difficult to deal with. The other piece is that the way the rates are set for service providers, because most service providers get funding through the regional center, which is the organization that supports people in the community, they have a choice whether they're going to work with people or who they're going to work with. And so a lot of people choose not to work with that population. And that's the population that I've always wanted to work with because they don't have any other services. That's one thing. And the other is that I like a challenge. I played competitive chess when I was growing up. I like figuring things out. And if you're going to work with this population, you have to be persistent because you're going to try things that don't work. And so you're going to have to try something else. And so I had a rule in my organization that we're going to figure stuff out. We're not going to demit anybody because they're exhibiting behavior that is problematic. Because a lot of times people will get suspended from a program if they do something. We never did that. We always if something that we were trying did not work, then we tried something else. Because we were, for a long time in Alameda County and Contra Costa County, we were the only program that was working with people that had a lot of complexity. There were other programs that took people with behaviors, but we were taking people who were coming out of state hospitals, locked facilities, or who had been unsuccessful at other day programs. And I decided that we were going to be the end of the line for them. Because if you can put yourself in their position, they know that they're getting put out of places. They know that people don't like to be around them. They know all of these things. And so I wanted them to come to our program and be successful. And by and large, most of the people who came to our program were. I gave one person the heave ho, and it wasn't because of them. It's just that their parent was getting so obnoxious that I was afraid the parent was going to hurt one of my staff. And so I kicked the person out, but not because of anything they had done. It was more because of what the parent was doing. And so I'm really proud to say that in our day program, we worked with everybody who came to us, no matter how difficult. We never gave up on them. And that's why I think we were successful, because we persisted.
So for our audience out there, could you describe a little bit more about the primary objective of Harambee Consulting Group?
So with our consulting group, which I started in 2013, I had always been working with people on the side of my nonprofit to help them either get their business up and running or to help them put together their program design or how they were going to structure their program. I have a background in mental health, and so I really like helping people realize whatever vision they want for their program, and then adding those clinical pieces that are going to make their program stronger. And I incorporated in 2013. And then when I retired from my nonprofit in 2020, I started working in the consulting company full time. And so now we have a subscription service where we work with service providers that serve people with intellectual disabilities. We help them formulate ideas about what kind of services they want to provide. We help them figure out how to monitor those services, how to be in compliance with the regulations, because these businesses are highly regulated because of the work that they do. And we also help them with training their staff. We also have folks that can help them with their back office, such as their audit they have to do or their HR and quality assurance. I have a couple of people who work with me who used to be regional center quality assurance people. So we go in and look at their files. The one thing that I enjoy about this business is helping people solve an unmet need. Because some of the people in my group, when they first came, they only looked at residential. They wanted to develop a residential facility. And so I like introducing them to other kinds of services that people might need or that are not currently there. We've helped some people do a program called Adaptive Skills Training, which is a program that works very well for people who are very complex. And then we've also recently been working with people who are going to be providing coordinated family services where families can get people to come into their home and do what we call care management to help them access services and navigate the regional center and help them keep their child at home, because a lot of people, especially people of color, don't tend to place their kids in placement. They want to keep them at home, especially Latino and Asian families. And so this program is really a godsend for them because they can keep their children at home and also have the wraparound services they're going to need to make sure that their kids get the services that they need and that the parents get some respite that they need. Because it's very difficult having a child that has special needs in this environment, because the way the system is set up, because providers can choose who they want to work with, people don't choose to work with people that have exuberant behaviors. There's very few providers out there that are concentrating on that population. It's expensive and everybody gets the same rate, so that's another deterrent for people. I got a little bit of a higher rate because my rate was called negotiated, but for some other people, they're going to get the same rate as somebody else. So I think that a lot of times people say, why should I take on the headache if I don't have to? And so that way, a lot of people who have very high needs end up not being served. The other piece around that is that when you're working with people who have a lot of complexity, or if you're working with people on the spectrum who are maybe nonverbal and don't have a lot of functional skills, then sometimes you have to feed them, you have to change their diaper, you have to do a lot of caregiving. And what I've seen over the years, because I've been in the field since '85, people are less and less inclined to do that caregiving. At my day program, I required everybody who worked there, from the clinical director who had a master's degree to the people who work with the participants, everybody I hired needed to be able to take care of people's personal needs, changing them, feeding them, lifting and transferring them, whatever it is. That's not true of a lot of programs. A lot of programs won't take people that have those kind of needs. And to me, this is very disturbing. And I don't know what the answer to it is. I feel like in this country, we need to do what farmers do and bring people from other countries that are willing to do the work here, to do the caretaking that Americans have gotten away from. So there are some very deep issues in terms of funding, in terms of encouraging people to go into this field. Our program, we had an internship program with a lot of the social work schools in the Bay Area, and we were offering to pay people to do their internships. And over the years, we had maybe 2 people take us up on our offer because other people just didn't want to work with this population. And they especially didn't want to work with people that had exuberant behaviors.
And also with nonverbal children and adults, for instance, it's really hard to understand what they need. So I guess that might also be one deterrent factor for caregivers as well. But in your personal experience, could you share some success stories or impactful moments that you had while working with these communities?
Sure, I have a bunch. One that I'm especially proud of is we had a guy who had come out of Porterville. And Porterville is a state developmental center for people who are not able to be adjudicated or they've been found to be not competent to stand trial. And so those folks many times get diverted to places like state developmental centers. And this guy had come out of a state developmental center. This is when they were trying to close them down because they've been steadily in California closing them down over the last 15, 20 years. And he had come to us from a specialized residential program that was taking care of him. And when we read his file, we thought, oh my, his file was very disturbing, had a lot of really aggressive behaviors. And so I sent so with people that have a lot of really aggressive behaviors and could be a problem for people in the community, we usually would start working with those people from their home before we bring them to our center or our community-based program. So I sent one of my best staff to work with him. She's been in the field for a long time. She's got a nice, loving kind of personality that people gravitate to. And the first day that she was there, he was being very aggressive toward her. So she locked herself in the bathroom and called me and saying that, oh, this guy might be beyond my capabilities, blah, blah, blah. And so I sent another staff over there to talk to him, and she was able to come out of the bathroom. And so I decided to go over and talk to him myself. And I'm very straight with the people that I work with, and I talk to them just like I'm talking to you. And so I told him that I was very disturbed by the way he was treating my staff, and that we could never have that kind of a situation before where he's going to try to attack my staff. And I told him that if he's going to come into our program, that I have two things that he needs to be able to do, or else I'm not going to work with him. One was that he can't put his hands on people. And the other was that he can't destroy property that could potentially hurt somebody. And so I told him that if he does come into the program and he does any of those things, that I was going to call the police and press charges on him to make sure that he went to jail. And so he says to me, you can't do that. He goes, when I do something like that, I'm supposed to go to John George's, a mental health institution in Oakland. And so I thought that was funny. And I laughed and I said, no, if you come to our program, you're going to go to jail if you do anything like that. I said, you can do anything that you want to when you come to our program. And so then I changed the subject so that we could talk about what he liked to do. And my God, this guy had a list of things that he loved. He was really into Chinese art. He was really into collecting stamps. He collected different kinds of money. He loved reptiles. And so, there's a vivarium in Berkeley. And I said, if you like reptiles, there's a place in Berkeley that you might like. We just got him a schedule of things that he really liked for the first 30 days that he was in our program. So staff was taking him over to the reptile place. They would take him to this place where they have some place that was on Shattuck Avenue in Berkeley that had old stamps and things like that. We kept him very busy with things that he really liked. And we had some moments with him where he would get dysregulated and throw something, but we never had any more problems with him once he got connected to the things that he really liked to do. It was a huge lesson for all of us because he came to us pretty early after we opened. But if people are engaged with things that are meaningful to them, a lot of times these behaviors drop off. The behaviors are happening because people are trying to put square peg in round holes. And if we just allow people to be who they are and encourage them to follow their interests and make those things happen for them, then, those things drop off. I think it is really important, though, that we're really honest with people about what expectations are. I always, when new staff came on board, I told them, these are my expectations for the staff. I said those things for the participants, so people are all on the same page when they start out. And I think those kinds of things are really important. And then when people do have a situation where they get dysregulated, we always looked at it as a one-off. Okay, you're having a bad day today. How can we help this day be better? And Tomorrow, we're going to start fresh. We're going to start a new day. We had a lot of behavioral incentives at our program. In fact, this guy had a monetary one where if he met his behavioral goals for the day, he got $1. And at the end of the week, he got $5. And that was very motivating for him because he liked money. So we had a lot of those agreements where people were earning things based on meeting their agreements with us. And our agreements were two-way. We were going to do some things for you, and then you were going to do some things for us. And that seemed to work really well for our folks. That, and also having a good behavior plan around them. I am not a board certified behavior analyst, but I had really good ones working with me. And so we always had a behavior plan that we were looking and following.
So as the coach of a badminton camp with special needs children, I'd actually noticed that on the first day of our camp, there were typically like younger students who would often cry and cling on to their mother or father because it would be really uncomfortable for them. And sometimes they would also have like temper tantrums, as you were mentioning. But as like they were playing badminton more frequently, I noticed that they were more carefree. They were really happy while playing the program. So really getting into what they like to do and their strengths is should be the focus for every caregiver, in fact.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think that since autism, transitioning to my next question, since autism is becoming more prevalent within our society, according to the CDC, they mentioned, I think 1 in 36 children are becoming autistic. Um, there's still not really a lot of awareness and support for people with autism. So, in your experience, what are some effective strategies for raising awareness and promoting acceptance of individuals with exuberant behaviors and other associated challenges?
There's a lot to do at the policy level, that's for sure. I am on the board of the Autism Society of the Bay Area. And so that's one of the ways in which I try to do some community service around this issue. I also think that in the services that I provided, I've always just gone out to people and explained who we were working with, why we wanted to partner with them, because we had a lot of partnerships in the community from my program, because I believe very strongly that everybody should commit to doing some kind of public service. So everybody in my day program, no matter what their functioning level, they did something. They did some kind of volunteer work. For the folks that were maybe didn't have a lot of skills or were nonverbal, we partnered with the East Bay Regional Park Service, and they did trail maintenance during the summer. And it was perfect for them because if they had a tantrum, the park rangers didn't care. They could have their tantrum, they were way out in the middle of nowhere, they weren't hurting anybody. And after they would have their situation, staff would ask them if they're okay to go back to work, and they would. Since 1985, I would take my participants in the community everywhere. We would take them for happy hour. We would go, we did a lot of work in Oakland, so we walked around the lake, and I would take them to lunch at places. In the 80s, people were sometimes quite rude to us. We were in a burrito shop having burrito, and some lady came over to the table and said, "How dare you bring, quote unquote, these people in the community? You spoiled my lunch." And one of the people sitting at the table with me, one of my participants, said, "Can't you see we're effing disabled? You don't talk to disabled people like that." And so I said, "Oh, good job. That was excellent what you told her." Because this is somebody who might have hit her if it had been a different situation. So I've always been of the mind that it's important to teach people proper deportment when you go out, that you're not going to touch people. You're going to always ask before you touch somebody. I've always taken my folks out in the community. And what I've noticed over the years is now people are much more open to having, people in their environment, because autism has gotten the number of people is a lot more. Now people know somebody who is on the spectrum. Somebody at their school, or people might have somebody in their family. I reached out to the adult school in San Leandro because I wanted to see if we could partner with them to do some courses at their place for other people that outside of my day program who had disabilities. And I found out later that the principal, his brother, had developmental disabilities. So now it's much easier to be out in the community and do things. I think where the big problem that we have now is there's just not enough services. There just literally are not enough people to help populate programs that can help people. And that is a huge issue because a lot of people are not getting services. I know for a fact that a lot of people don't have day programs or at home. It's a strain on their parents. I answer the information and referral line for the Autism Society, and some of the stories I'm hearing break my heart. Parents are just really out there struggling, and there's just not a lot of services. And so I think that we have to rearrange our resources so that we're making sure that these families are getting the support that they need. Because this is not, if you have a child that has disabilities, this is not just your issue. It's the whole society, it's the whole community's issue. And the community has to come together to solve these issues. I reached out to high school students during the summer to come and work with us so that they would get exposure and maybe think about this as a career. And we do have a few people, I did talk a few people into it, but I think more of that needs to be done. Because I think sometimes people want to stay away because it looks scary or it looks hard. And I'm not going to pretend that it's easy to work with this population, but it's really rewarding. There's no greater feeling than to have somebody come up to you and say, I use my words and not my fist. Because that's one of the things we teach them. Instead of hitting, use your words. And if you can't use your words, then let us teach you some other ways of communicating so that you're not hurting somebody. And so I get a great deal of personal satisfaction when that happens.
Yeah, so when I was actually attending middle school, some of my friends, they had actually really had a stigmatized and really negative view about autism and some of these more disabilities as well. But I would say that for them, education was really effective in order to provide more awareness about it. So how do you think education can play a more inclusive and understanding society for individuals with exuberant behaviors and related conditions?
I think education is important. I also think exposure is important too, which is one of the reasons why I really encouraged everybody in my program to be out in the community volunteering. So a group of our folks would go to the Alameda County Food Bank and help sort food alongside high school groups and others. And it was really good for, I believe, those students to be working alongside the folks in my program because they can see you. Certainly somebody with autism is maybe a little different than most, but we all have the same humanity. As people, we all have the same humanity. And so if you're working alongside of somebody who you don't have much experience with, this is a big learning for you in terms of you being helpful, because a lot of times the students would be helpful when our folks maybe didn't understand what was going on or they were getting dysregulated or something like that. And for them to watch how the staff intervene with them teaches them a lot of things. I used to encourage my staff to have their kids work with us during the summer if their kids were 18 and older, so that they would get an idea of what their parents did at work. And it was really important because the thing that's so wonderful about this field is that when people get exposed to the folks, they get hooked just like I got hooked. It's just that people don't allow themselves to be exposed. And so that's where we have a lot of the issues. So I know many of the high schools in the Bay Area have programs where they can do volunteer work. I would really encourage people to volunteer with this population because they're going to get the best education ever by just working alongside them, maybe doing some activities with them, or working on projects where everybody working on the project is really into that project, like an art project or a theater group or something like that. I think that's the best way to get to know people and understand where they're coming from. So I really encourage people listening to this podcast to ring up a program and offer to teach them something that they're really excited about. Because I do think it's important that people in the field have something they're really passionate about so they can teach others that passion. When I was looking for staff at my programs, I always, in our application, we asked people, what do you do in your spare time? What are your hobbies? Because we wanted to see how involved you were with your life and how much enjoyment you got in your life. Because if you don't have those kind of enjoyments, you can't translate that to others. And I'll give you an example of that. I hired a guy who was really into fishing. He loved fishing. And we had never taken the participants in our program fishing. And so I reached out to the parents and say, hey, we need some fishing poles. And Regional Center got us fishing licenses, and we started taking the participants out to fish. Well, a couple of the participants really liked it. And so not everybody did, but we always like to expose people to novel situations. So for those people that really liked it, they would go fishing with this staff person, and he was really happy because he was doing something he really liked, and he sparked the interest in these other folks. So we have a situation where we're exposing folks to novel activities and letting them choose if this is something they want to do again. And if it's something that they really like, then now this is something that goes on their schedule for the future. And so now the staff is happy because they're sharing what kinds of things they like. And then the participants are happy because they learned about something that maybe they didn't know about before. Because if you're coming out of a state hospital, you probably haven't been fishing, or even to the beach, or things that we take for granted. And so we built our program, or I tried to build a program by hiring people who were very energetic, who had their own passions that they can pass along to the participants and teach them new things. So I think that the best education is to just jump in there and do something in the community.
Thank you for that great response. And lastly, how do you envision the future of support and advocacy for individuals with exuberant behaviors and other related conditions?
I try to be optimistic about things, but right now things are not good because, as I mentioned, California is in a deficit right now. And whenever that happens, they look to our industry to cut first. And so that tends to worry me. When I started my program around 2007, there were only 2 programs in the Alameda Contra Costa area that work with that population. Now we have a lot more. Many of whom are my former staff. I have about 7 staff out there that I help start their own businesses. Plus other people have gotten into the field. So I think I've been trying to nurture that group of service providers that are trying to provide those services. But unless we come up with some kind of a solution for the caretaking staff, I don't know. I don't feel pessimistic. I don't feel optimistic about the immediate future. I think that at some point, government is going to have to get more involved because the numbers around autism are just too big to ignore. They're going to have to be some mass unit. Now, we're going through some things right now where we're trying to make sure that the governor goes through with the promise that was made for people in our industry. And so far, so good. The legislature has rejected the idea that we should wait till next year. And so that's very heartening. So I hope everybody who's looking at this podcast will call Governor Newsom and tell him that we need these services and these increases to go through as planned, because we really need it. I feel very frightened for the people who are children now, because I'm not sure what's going to look like when they get to be adult, because adult services are really difficult. Between the ages of 3 and 22, school districts are covering these services, so they tend to be pretty decent. Once people get to the adult stage, the services slack off. So as I retire, I am retiring on July 1st. As I'm retiring, I'm just hoping that the infrastructure that we've put out there for small businesses will be very helpful to people in the future, and that these problems will be solved by people smarter than me. So that's my hope for the future.
Congrats for your retirement also. And that's all for today, folks. It was a pleasure meeting you today, Miss Bradley. Thank you so much for providing me with your valuable time today.
Thank you very much. And you had really great questions. I have to give you that.
Thank you. And to our audience out there, thank you so much for tuning in today. We will return with another change maker soon. Until then, take care, and remember, inclusion leads to innovation. Peace out.
Yeah, thanks.